Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse number 4. Santvayam asamunabhir pata bandhu sucharpitam bhuteshu kalasya gatim vishayanna pratikriyam santavyam asamunibhir pata hata bandhu sucharpitam bhuteshu kalasya gatim vishayanna pratikriyam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Citing the stringent laws of the Almighty and their reactions upon living beings, Lord Sri Krishna, the Munis began to pacify those who were shocked and affected. Purport. The stringent laws of nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be altered by any living entity. The living entities are eternally under the subjugation of the Almighty Lord. The Lord makes all the laws and orders, and these laws and orders are generally called dharma or religion. No one can create any religious formula. Bona fide religion is to abide by the orders of the Lord. The Lord's orders are clearly declared in Bhagavad Gita. Everyone should follow him only, or his orders, and that will make all happy, both materially and spiritually. As long as we are in the material world, our duty is to follow the orders of the Lord. And if by the grace of the Lord we are liberated from the clutches of the material world, then in our liberated state also we can render transcendental loving service unto the Lord. In our material stage, we can see neither ourselves nor the Lord for the want of spiritual vision. But when we are liberated from the material affection and are situated in our original spiritual form, we can see both ourselves and the Lord face to face. Mukti means to be reinstated in one's original spiritual status after giving up the material conception of life. Therefore, human life is specifically meant for qualifying ourselves for this spiritual liberty. Unfortunately, under the influence of illusionary material energy, we accept the spot life of only a few years as our permanent existence, and thus become illusioned by possessing so-called country, home, land, children, wife, community, wealth, etc., which are the false representations created by Maya or illusion. And under the dictation of Maya, we fight with one another to protect the false possessions. By cultivating spiritual knowledge, we can realize that we have nothing to do with all this material paraphernalia. Then at once we become free from material attachment. This clearance of misgivings of material existence at once takes place by association with the Lord's devotees, who are able to inject transcendental sound into the depths of the bewildered heart, and thus make one particularly liberated from all lamentation and illusion. That is the summary of pacifying measures for those affected by reaction to stringent material laws, exhibiting in the forms of birth, death, old age, and disease, this which are insoluble factors of material existence. The victims of war, namely the family members of the Kuru, were lamenting the problems of death, and the Lord pacified them on the basis of knowledge. Om Jnana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desatarini Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Acharya Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna, welcome to everyone to our daily Srimad Bhagavatam reading. Again, we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse number 4. Translation again. Citing the stringent laws of the Almighty and their reactions upon living beings, Lord Sri Krishna and the Munis began to pacify those who were shocked and affected. So, before I speak anything on this verse, I have to seek the blessings of all Vaishnavas here. I'll try to put, whatever small realizations I have, there's a nice version of Srimad Bhagavatam which explains that anybody who's speaking on Srimad Bhagavatam can be compared to a bird. Some birds, like sparrows, fly at a lower height. Some birds, like eagles, fly at a much, much higher altitude. So each speaker on Srimad Bhagavatam, based on their knowledge and realization, they fly at different levels. I don't even consider myself a sparrow, maybe like an ostrich who can just jump and hop on the ground. So with that limited knowledge, and the service that is given to me, I'll try to put a few words here. And it's also a very interesting verse in the sense that Srila Prabhupada summarizes the whole of Bhagavad Gita in just one page. And Prabhupada also starts with Bhagavad Gita in the beginning. So the context where we are today is, we saw how the battle of Kurukshetra has happened, and all the, a lot of kings, a lot of relatives of the Pandavas, they all died and perished. Now, they are going to the Ganges to offer, to take a bath, basically the process of doing the rituals for the departed souls, right? So they are going to the bank of the Ganges, and they are ready to be offered the water, and then they were remembering them, the process of lamentation, and how they lost their loved and beloved ones. And as they are contemplating and lamenting on this, we see how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and the Munis began to pacify, Yudhishthira Maharaj specifically, and the relatives of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And here Srila Prabhupada is very nicely explaining about the process of helping somebody who's lamenting, or whoever is affected by, in the process of grief or lamentation, or going through some hard time or problems, right? So if you read the purport from top to down, it is very interesting. Just for fun, I read it from bottom to up. I mean, not exactly every sentence bottom to up, but because Srila Prabhupada, towards the end, he gives a small summary. He says, the summary, in summary of whatever Srila Prabhupada explaining in this purport, is the process of, or the pacifying measures for those who are affected by the reaction of stringent laws exhibited in the form of birth, death, old age, and disease, which are insoluble factors of this material existence. So how can one be pacified from problems that happen, or the problems that we encounter? And interestingly, Srila Prabhupada points out, these are insoluble problems. We often come across problems that can be solved, and problems that can never be solved. So problems that can, I think I happened to watch a lecture quite a bit ago. I don't remember the complete details, by Gaura Gopal Prabhu. He lays out a nice flow chart. He says, I have a problem and I'm lamenting about that problem. So how should one deal with that situation, right? Then he draws a graph and he says, is there a solution to this problem, or is there no solution to this problem? And then he says, if there is a solution to the problem, then there's no point in lamenting about it. So go and solve the problem. And then he says, if there is no solution to the problem, there's no point in lamenting about it. Because we know that there is no solution to this problem. and we just have to deal with the problem. So in here, Srila Prabhupada is very nicely saying here, right? There are some problems that can never be solved in this material world, for sure. Right? No matter how rich we are, how poor we are, or in any status, right? Not only just in terms of richness. Maybe I may be young, I may be old, I may be very knowledgeable, I may not be very knowledgeable, but 4 problems are common to everyone. We read in the like in our seminars for science of self-realization: birth, death, old age, and disease. These 4 problems can never be solved. Now, for problems like this that can never be solved, how do we react to them, right? And then Srila Prabhupada is nicely concluding, saying that the victims of war, namely the family members of the crew, were lamenting the problems of death, and the Lord pacified them on the basis of knowledge. So that is very important. For us, the basis of knowledge is very important to overcome any problem. There's this nice verse, right? Ashatoma Satkamaya, Tamasima Jyotirgamaya. So for lack of knowledge is called ignorance. So if you want to come out of ignorance, because lamentation is a symptom of ignorance. I'll talk a little bit about the 3 modes of material nature, and one of the modes of material nature is ignorance. And in ignorance, a key experience that one person gets in ignorance is lamentation. So to come out of that ignorance is to come into knowledge. Just like if a room is full of darkness, you just light a match or bring about a source of light, and the whole darkness is dissipated. Similarly, by coming to the platform of knowledge, another word for platform of knowledge is nothing but mode of goodness, ignorance is destroyed. We also, I just recited the verse, Om Ajnana Timrandasa Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. The Guru, our Siksha Gurus, our Diksha Gurus, they are giving us knowledge so that we come out of ignorance, or we come into the platform of knowledge, so lamentation is destroyed for us within our heart. And that's what the Supreme Personality of God, Sri Krishna, is doing for Yudhishthira Maharaj. And we should understand also, Yudhishthira Maharaj is such an elevated devotee of the Lord. Even a very elevated person can be subjected to lamentation, to ignorance sometimes. But in this case, we can definitely accept that this is more a pastime of the Lord, because this is a pastime since the Lord through Yudhishthira Maharaj is going to reveal some knowledge for us. Now let's go back to the beginning of the purport, right? So the beginning of the purport talks about the stringent laws of nature. And then as Srila Prabhupada talks about the stringent laws of nature, he points us to Bhagavad Gita, right? He says, the Lord makes all these laws and nobody is beyond this law, but and one cannot make your own religious formulas. He says, the Lord makes all the laws and orders, and these laws and orders are generally called dharma or religion. But nobody can manufacture that, but only the Supreme Lord. And the bona fide religion is to abide by the laws of the Lord. The Lord's orders are clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita. So I just want to touch on the topic of Bhagavad Gita here. So what are laws of material nature? I want to start from that, right? From the point of what are the laws of material nature? So if you want to systematically understand this, right, the Bhagavad Gita can be systematically broken down into 5 topics. There is Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Karma, and Kala. So we need to understand these 5 topics very systematically to understand the laws of material nature, first of all. So as a first step, and again, this is going back to basics. We hear this always and several times, but unless we imbibe it into us, we won't be able to transcend the modes of material nature. See, there is Gnan and Vignan, and I'm speaking to myself. Sorry, I'm not preaching here. So Gnan is having the knowledge, meaning reading a book and understanding the book, right? Vignan is reading a book, understanding the knowledge, and implementing it in our own life. There's a huge difference with this. One is called more like we know what it is, meaning it's like, for example, when we were in our school, right? They say, when you take salt and mix, when you mix an acid with base, you get salt and water. Yes, we have the knowledge. Acid plus base is equal to salt and water. But when you actually do the experiment, it is not just as simple as acid plus base is equal to salt and water, but there is different kinds of acids, different concentrations of acids, different kinds of bases, different concentrations of bases, and depending upon the proportion that you mix, the results can be different, varying. So that is Vignan. Vignan means taking this knowledge and applying it in our life on a day-to-day basis, moment-to-moment basis. And then the experience we get out of it is actually Vignan. So going back to the basics, the Supreme Lord simply classifies this whole world into three categories. There is a superior energy, there is an inferior energy, and there is a marginal energy. The superior energy is nothing but the Supreme Lord, who has created this world, like Srila Prabhupada is saying in this purport, who has created this material world and put in this laws. The inferior energy is nothing but the field of activity. Actually, it's very nice, how Bhagavad Gita is broken and how Arjuna interacts with Krishna as a perfect student is very, very, I would say, you can relish it. If you understand the mood in which Arjuna is inquiring from Krishna, it's a very relishable topic. We see in the beginning, Arjuna has a few arguments, and then he speaks about, Lord Krishna counteracts those arguments, and then he presents forth the Karma Yoga. Then he comes to Bhakti Yoga, which is the highest of all, right? Beyond, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So in the middle, he comes to Bhakti Yoga. But then Arjuna continues the discussion while Krishna has taken him to a highest platform, which is the topmost of all the steps in the ladder. Arjuna takes one step back, even after he's giving the topmost knowledge, because he wants to clearly understand and imbibe that. Actually, he's doing it for us, because sometimes, as speaking about myself in a neophyte stage as myself, because we understand the highest of all knowledge, we sometimes reject the lower ones. And actually, one should clearly understand, Krishna never rejects anything. As he speaks Bhagavad Gita, he never rejects anything. He only emphasizes, I think even Arjuna actually asked this question. He says, I'm sorry, I'm diverting a little bit, but I want to create a foundation to what I'm going to speak next. Is Arjuna, he clearly asks Krishna, what is better? Is renunciation better or action is better? And then clearly the Supreme Lord, he never rejects it. He says renunciation is not good. He actually says, and in simple layman's terms, is vairagya better, meaning renunciation, or action is better. But Krishna introduces the concept of yukta vairagya, meaning you don't have to reject anything, but just devote time to that one. And that is the process of Bhakti Yoga. Now, where I'm trying to get to is, I'm trying to get to chapter 13 in Bhagavad Gita. After Krishna speaks about the whole of Bhakti Yoga, how engagement in the service of the Supreme Lord is highest of all, Arjuna kind of takes a turn and goes into chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, where he asks, tell me about, the field of activity. Tell me about the doer. He poses 5 questions in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita. So I'm trying to give you a synopsis of the chapter 13 for us to understand the loss of this material nature. That's what I'm trying to get, because today's topic is that. So there you can see how the Supreme Lord is explaining the field of activity, meaning we are all in this material world. So we are the marginal energy. The Krishna is the supreme energy, and Prakriti, or material nature is the inferior energy. And we are the marginal, the jivas, who are flickering between the two. Sometimes we are in association with the spiritual energy. Sometimes we are in the association of prakriti, or the material energy, or the inferior energy. And a lot of the laws that we deal in this material world, most of the time are with the material energy. I would say most of the time, like 95, 99% of the time is material energy. Now, there's a very nice pastime, with Srila Prabhupada. If I remember correctly, a devotee asks Srila Prabhupada, how can I make sure I never fall in Maya? Or in terms of how I do not be influenced by Maya. Then Srila Prabhupada corrects him and says, you're most of the time influenced by Maya, but sometimes you're influenced by Krishna. So the topic, okay, I've been diverting a bit. So I want to go and talk about the laws of nature, right? So as Krishna is explaining, this inferior energy, superior energy, the field of activity, and because we are dealing with the field of activity most of the time, I want to touch upon this topic, right? So there are several, you can categorize the laws of this material nature at different levels. Whether we know about dull matter, meaning in this material world, like the higher energy is us, the spiritual souls, and then the lower energy, which is the purely material energy, is the matter. In this level, the whole material world education is dealing with dull matter. May it be chemistry, may it be biology, may it be engineering, and a lot of these, right? All these sciences are talking about the material and the laws of matter. And even the Vedas also deal with the laws of matter. For example, we call it today engineering, but Vastu Shastra is nothing but engineering at a different level. For example, a simple example I can give you is the Vastu Shastra states that if you have a house facing east, you get a lot of sunlight. As simple as that, because the sun travels from east to west, so it's going to go around, traveling from east towards the south to the west, right? Now, as the sun travels, sunlight is coming in a certain direction, so you can take advantage of that direction of the sun to have, in the olden days, for example, right, when we did not have much electricity, when we do not have much heating and whatnot, and because a lot of the people, like, for example, women spent a lot of time in kitchen, so southeast corner was meant to be the most beneficial area for kitchen, because that's where you get a lot of sunlight. When the sun travels, that's where you get a lot, more heat. For example, the northeast corner is, people used to have wells and whatnot, because when rain comes, the sun doesn't fall much on the northeast corner because the sun is traveling towards southeast. So the water goes into that corner, the northeast corner, and that's where people had wells, because there's a more saturation of water, and then the well, you could dig water out of it. So the point I'm trying to say here is, this is engineering. We can continue to use that engineering laws in the service of Krishna. We don't have to reject them, right? So, for example, if we are building a temple, we just recently built our parking lot. We use the science of engineering, where, all our bricks are laid out, when there is rain, the water is going through the porous bricks, and everything is taken care of, right? That's the science of engineering. Now, in similar way, there's so many other Shastric injunctions, or even material education, we call it chemistry, biology, physics, or whatnot. For example, Ayurveda is the science of the body, how the body can be maintained, how the Vata, Pitta, Kapha can be maintained in the body, so that our body doesn't give us problems and whatnot. So that is Ayurveda, right? Similarly, so we have so many sciences in the Vedas. Now, Krishna takes us to a little more higher platform. After he talks about material energy, he talks about there's subtle laws in this material world. And this is an area, I think, where science ends is science today deals with dull matter. It comes a little bit into the subtle energy, especially if you're in the medical field, they talk about the body, how the body works. They take it one level up, they talk about psychological problems. So, that's more in the area of the mind, how the mind interacts and how somebody can have problems with the mind and how the mind creates the problem. But usually the solutions are still at the body platform. But maximum the science comes is to that level. But here, the Supreme Lord, he gives us more information in Bhagavad Gita again, in chapter 13 through 18. He takes us to the modes of material nature. So this is where we as an individual soul are being influenced in this material world. He talks about the mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And then how a living entity can be influenced by these modes of material nature. So for example, if you're experiencing a problem, one simple solution is for us to think of, okay, in what mode am I operating on? For example, if you have a problem with your neighbor, or with a friend or a colleague or anything, in what mode am I operating in? If you just take that one step back and think about in what mode am I operating in, that can give you a clear, that brings you to the platform of basically knowledge, and potentially you can solve the problem by understanding in what mode which we are operating. So that's the second level, right? Meaning at the bodily platform or at the matter level, we have certain aspects that we deal with, and then we go to the modes of material nature. So even beyond the modes of material nature, right? Our body, mind, and intelligence and our identity, or also false ego, is being operating at the modes of material nature. But here, to solve the problems of birth, death, old age, and disease, and Srila Prabhupada, in a different purport, he very nicely explains when he talks about the strict laws of material nature. This is the punchline I want to get to today, is when he talks about the strict laws of material nature, he's not just necessarily talking about the kind of experiences we have in this material world. What he says about when it is time for us to leave this body, as long as we are in this body, we have some control, or we have some opportunity to achieve something higher. But the moment we leave this body, that's it. It's beyond our control. The moment we leave this body, the kind of body that we get after is completely in the strict laws of material nature. So this is the punchline I am trying to get to, and I'm also meditating upon. So we have certain facilities, we have certain opportunities, we have certain, especially opportunities, I would say, that we have control on in our life now. We have an opportunity to perform devotional service. We have an opportunity to associate with devotees of the Lord, and then gain knowledge through this process. But this opportunity is going to be lost at one point of time. That is at the point of leaving this body. After that, there is no control on us. The laws of the world, or the laws given by the Supreme Lord, will govern what our destination is going to be. So in the whole of Bhagavad Gita, what the Supreme Lord is trying to say is, what you can do until the point of death is a very, very important step. And each one of us, what we should be doing is also given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the moment we pass this line, that's when it's beyond our control. Now, Srila Prabhupada in this purport very nicely explains how we can associate with the devotees of the Lord and gain the knowledge and engage in devotional service. And then we also see how Krishna says how he's favorable to us. Towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, he says, Sarva dharman paritya mamekam sharanam praja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshaishyami ma suchaha. What he says is, Sarva dharman paritya, surrender everything unto me and take shelter of me, right? And he's saying at the time of death, aham tvam sarva papebhyo. Forget the modes of material nature, forget how much karma we accumulated. One of the topics I didn't touch upon is karma and everything. I will take care of that. So your next destiny is going to be taken care by me. But he gives us a choice. As long as we have this material body, we can perform something that we can please the Supreme Lord so that he can take us to a different destination. So having said that, I think each one of us have this very, very rare, extremely rare opportunity that by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, by the mercy of the devotees, we have this opportunity to perform devotion. So let us all take advantage of that. And while we absolutely have no control in this material world or on the loss of the material nature, we can do something at that point of death where the stringent laws apply. Prior to that, we may have a little bit of control, but after that, let us hope that Krishna, the Supreme Lord, picks us up and give us whatever is worth of us. Right? Okay, this is what I wanted to say today. Any questions, comments? I hope I was speaking and you were able to hear.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. It was a very nice class, and you covered a broad spectrum of what we have, that knowledge we have acquired so far. So I was having this question about Prakrite Kriyamana Nikuna Karma Sarvasya Ahankara Vinuthatma Karta Vidimanyate. So does it apply? So can you please shed some light on that based on, like, is the devotee beyond that one, Prabhu? Is the devotee beyond that one, where the modes are, the modes are carrying out the work? And the doers.
My understanding is, Krishna talks in Bhagavad Gita about, is it 5? I think the 5 aspects of action. He talks about for any action or for any endeavor, there are 5 factors. One is the desire of the living entity. It's purely desire, that's it. And then the material nature enables it. Lord Krishna sanctions it. I'm thinking of the 2 other. Is it 3 or 5? Okay. But my understanding is our desire to, or our endeavor is kind of triggering it, right? But again, the other things need to act upon it. Now, that desire can be in one of these different modes, right? My desires could be in the mode of passion, mode of ignorance, mode of goodness too, right? And then there's and actually beyond these 3 modes is, I think the devotees are operating beyond the 3 modes, meaning, maybe I'll take a minute at least to explain my little understanding, right? The difference between the 3 modes of material nature and the pure goodness, Suddha Sattva. Ignorance is out of fear, meaning I'm going to go to the temple. Let's take the example of Janmashtami coming up, worship of Radha Shyam. So I'm going to go to the temple because if I don't go, something might happen to me. That is in the mode of ignorance, fear. I worship the Supreme Lord. Even bhakti can be in the modes. I worship the Supreme Lord, but out of fear that something bad may happen to me if I do not do it. The mode of passion is, let me go and perform the worship to the Supreme Lord so that other people think I'm a good devotee. What is my reputation going to be look like? So it is an expectation, or even, I'm going to go and ask the Supreme Lord for some favor for me. The mode of goodness is, It is my responsibility, it is my duty. I have to worship the Lord, so I will perform that worship to the Supreme Lord. But Suddha Sattva is, it's not about duty, it is not about expectations, it is not about fear. It is more about, this is something I want to do to please the Supreme Lord. It's not because of duty. Again, it's a very, very subtle difference. It's not even about duty. It's about, I want to do it for the, a simple example is the difference between goodness, passion, ignorance versus Suddha Sattva is, a simple example that can explain this is, for example, I want to do this because I like to do this to the Supreme Lord. For example, I want to perform, I want to cook halwa because I want to cook halwa. Versus there is something that needs to be done that you don't want to do, you know, or you don't have the skill set for it or something like that, right? But you're still doing it. That is, so because that is what, I don't say that. I think it's a very subtle difference. I'm trying to explain that. So what, and going back to your question, I don't know if I was beating around the bush here, but going back to your question is, I feel that it is a desire of the pure devotee, which is in the mode of Suddha Sattva, which is beyond this material activities. But when you say devotee, I would probably categorize the person who's in Suddha Sattva. They are definitely beyond the modes of material nature.
Thank you.
Did it answer?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we are at time. If no comments, we'll end it here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srimad Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you.